We start our team coverage of this historic day with NewsNation's Robert Sherman, who braved the media circus in Miami. Robert, tell us what happened in court today.
Hey there, Elizabeth. So everything actually went mostly as we expected it would go today. The former president arrived here just before 2 o'clock this afternoon. He ended up taking a route into a lower level garage, so we never really saw him walk into the courthouse. But he officially turned himself in, went through the fingerprinting process. No mugshot, as we all anticipated. And then he was in court, where he pled not guilty to all 37 of the charges that he was faced with here. In terms of his demeanor, there are actually 9 members of the public who were allowed inside that courtroom to see things as they unfolded. We spoke with one of them. This is what they had to say happened inside that courtroom. Listen here.
It's an unfortunate situation, but it was good that I was able to see him. He's healthy. Obviously, he has a lot of tenacity. Good to see him like 15 feet away. So that was kind of amazing.
I was expecting him to be rowdy like normally on TV. I wasn't expecting. He behaved himself, and he represented his attorney himself well, because he didn't say nothing at all.
And then the former president was allowed to leave. No financial restrictions, no surrendering a passport, wasn't deemed a threat to flee. And as you saw, you pointed out with the video there, first stop, Cafe Versailles here in Miami. Elizabeth?
What happens next, Robert, in the court case? Jack Smith had promised a speedy trial in his public remarks.
And that's an interesting thing to note here, Elizabeth, is that we don't have a date in which they're going to be back in court. There is one logistical hurdle that still needs to be overcome, and that is prosecutors have to provide a list of witnesses that the former president is not allowed to speak about this case with. That has to be submitted to the judge, and then the former president has to review this. So that is a logistical step that needs to be taken first before we know when the 45th president is going to be back in that courtroom and the case will proceed.
And of course, the former president also needs a Florida attorney because this case is happening in Florida. He got off the plane yesterday in Mar-a-Lago and spent several hours trying to contact Florida lawyers, where reportedly most of them are passed on taking the case. Why is he having such trouble finding a Florida lawyer?
And as it's been documented in the past, there have been a lot of changes. So in terms of the legal counsel that the former president has, a lot of people exiting just the last couple of days. 2 more people left the team. We did have Todd Blanche and Chris Kice inside that courtroom today with the former president. It is well documented that there have been disagreements with some of his legal counsel about the best strategies to take and things of that nature as well. So that likely plays a large role in all of this. But Chris Kice is a player here in Florida. We can tell you that. He's been well around the circuit here in this state, and we'll see how that legal counsel and that team shapes and folds over the next couple of weeks and months.
Right, because he must have a Florida, a lawyer who's passed the Florida State Bar as part of this case. Chris Kice, you're right, is very respected, but he's had 3 lawyers quit in the last 4 weeks. So there seems to be an issue here. Many of them have an issue with Boris Epstein.
That is what we are hearing here, Elizabeth. And again, I don't have a JD, so I can't really weigh in on, the types of legal defenses and strategies that the former president should be using. But it does seem as though that there have been disagreements in the past with some of his legal counsel. Todd Blanche, though, has been a bit more of a mainstay who we've seen around the former president in the past. And we'll see if that continues for the foreseeable future.
All right, Robert Sherman, thanks so much.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.